All right, guys. Today I'm here with Davie. Davie's someone that I used to work with a long time ago, someone I really look up to and respect. Davie, welcome, and how are you, my friend?
I'm going good, man. How are you?
Doing well, man. It's been so long. It's so good to see you. And by the way, I have to say, I'm so proud of not only everything you've done on the business e-commerce side, but everything you're doing on the personal brand side is super inspiring. So I want to talk about all of that stuff today. Do you want to kind of quickly start with I guess, what you're working on and kind of what your focuses are?
Most definitely. So the Davie Group is our holding co of e-commerce companies. I started about 3 years ago. As you know, we worked together in the early stages. That includes the Oodie, calming blankets, pup naps, and 7 other e-commerce brands. I also, I've just been working on my personal brand, as you said. So really just wanted to jump on and hash things out and catch up.
Sweet, dude. I'm selfishly interested in the personal brand side. I know a bit about the ecom side. I want to talk about at what point in time, it doesn't feel like you started all that long ago in terms of the personal brand. When did you start? And what was that aha or that spark of hey, I want to give back. I'm not going to sell a course. What was the manifestation of that?
Yeah, I think there's a few components. One, I kind of used the excuse that I wanted to, stay in the dark and not kind of reveal the success of the brands. That was kind of the main component because, as you may have seen, there's been a lot of other kind of knockoffs kind of saturating the market now. Every time we kind of tell people that we do over 200 million, they are quite shocked. And I know that, I'm probably speaking to a lot of US listeners, but a lot of the Australian department stores and stuff didn't actually know the volumes that we were shifting. So I did really want to keep that quiet. That was probably the strategic element. But if I was to be completely honest, I probably was just so camera shy. And so part of it was humility. And I didn't really want to talk about, my success and whatnot. But it got to a point where, I realized that it was just the fact that, this industry, people share their results and stuff like that to try to lift people up. So that kind of went away as well. But then I just realized that I was just being really scared and I needed to grow personally to feel more comfortable in front of the camera and start sharing the knowledge. So once all of those dominoes were kind of down, I just committed to it. I hired a videographer from Melbourne and made him fly all the way over so I couldn't back out. And then, the first video was just on YouTube was absolutely terrible. We scratched it straight away and had to reshoot it the week after. But like everything, just constantly working at it, trying to get more comfortable.
I love that, man. And what's the timeline? It feels like it's been months. How long ago did you actually start producing content?
I reckon it would be about 6 months ago. We released our first YouTube video.
6 months ago, and you're having millions and tens of millions of views on every platform you touch. Oh my God. Nick and I were talking about you. We're like, we've been doing this for 3, 4, 5 years, and we can't keep up with Davie's 6 months in. He's crushing it.
Yeah, look, I guess it's very different. Our personal brands, I think that what you and Shaq do is so powerful to such a really influential group of people as well. I think a lot of my viewers, just from the mode of how I've grown it through YouTube SEO and also just the general story of my brands, probably attracts more like a new person to e-commerce as well. That's something that I've kind of noticed, but YouTube is just an absolute beast. It's just crazy how it just lifts all your other socials up. I don't really do anything on Instagram because I've got a lot of friends on Instagram. It's more, I didn't want to really kind of lose my personal page, if that makes sense. But even that grew to 20,000 followers just from YouTube alone. So yeah, it really kind of is that growth mode. I think also TikTok was one of the main reasons why I wanted to jump into building my personal brand. I saw that there was kind of this weird relationship between TikTok growth, where you can get obviously so many views, and trying to retain those views through YouTube. So it's kind of using TikTok to get the first initial top of funnel impression, pushing them to YouTube so they subscribe, so that I can keep that long-term value. And I knew that wouldn't stay around forever. So I was kind of just like, look, now is most definitely the time to get started.
I love that. So in terms of actually creating the content, do you batch the production and then kind of disseminate the clips over time? Or every day are you filming something and when we're seeing it, it's live?
Yeah, I'd love to say it's more organized than it is. We work really hard at it. Well, my videographer does. He's absolutely incredible. He does a lot of the organization, a lot of the ideas, the research into, what's working and whatnot on TikTok and YouTube. So we used to film like 3 or 4 videos in one weekend and then batch that up. But we're kind of behind at the moment. We're just trying to, produce something every week. We're doing like a variety of podcast episodes, which we'll have to get you on. We're doing tutorials as well. As those products and stuff are coming in to do more tutorials on, we're filling it up with, we're going to start doing some website reviews as well. But yeah, it's very ad hoc at the moment.
Got it. With the kind of the Davie personal brand growing and then also the 10 e-commerce brands that you own and run, how do you think about splitting the time, especially as like the personal brand is just accelerating, and I'm sure obviously the brands are too? How do you split the time between the two, and what are you prioritizing obviously going into Q4? Is it the brands?
It's most definitely the brands. It always is. The brands have, we have 70 full-time employees. That needs to be where my attention is. We've got millions of customers that, the personal brand, not that it's around my ego or anything like that. It is providing a lot of value, but I understand the gravity of the group and the brands as a whole, and that needs my full attention. So I just dedicate one day a week to YouTube and the personal brand, and that's a Saturday as well. So working mostly during the week on my brands.
I love it. The last question I have on the personal brand side, and then we can shift gears, is in terms of like the personal brand stuff. I know one of the sayings you have on all your socials is, "I'll never sell you a course." Can we talk about that? Like, I love the fact that you kind of draw that stance in the line, and you're really just kind of authentically and altruistically giving. Is there a story behind that, or it just is what it is?
Yeah, I think there's a few things. One, I've read a lot of stories about people doing courses just nonstop and just not getting results. I think there is this kind of, a lot of people, it's not snake oil salesmen, but they're selling things that are publicly available. It's the information should be publicly available. It is. I never did a course and I managed to build my brand. So I just kind of want to push the messaging that you don't need a course to be successful. I think courses are good at organizing information out there, but I don't, and possibly guiding people through that path, and creating structured learning as well, which I think some people enjoy. But if we're looking at an entrepreneur that's a young 16-year-old that has $500 saved up, I'd much rather them watch a YouTube video and spend that $500 on ads rather than the $500 course and then start at square one. So that's kind of just my position. And I think, it's just become part of my personal brand as well. People like it.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. I really respect it, and I think it's really cool what you do. So thank you. Shifting gears a little bit, in terms of the 10 brands that you own and run, were all those brands ones that you started? Have you acquired any brands? Are you looking at ever acquiring brands? Like, how do you think about starting versus buying?
Yeah, so I've started, I'd say three of our brands are about 10 million revenue plus. One of them is over $200 million revenue per year. And I also have purchased a business that does over 30 mil revenue a year. So we have acquired businesses and we've also grown them. It's the jury's still out what's best for us. I know Thrasio and a lot of other people acquire businesses because, they have that secondary platform to enhance and optimize. Whereas we actually have, when I first started the brands, I was like, okay, how do we make sure that this isn't just a flash in the pan? How do we systemize what I've just done? And it all comes down to product. We were kind of growing past people that were very competent in digital marketing. And it was because our product was just so much better. So now I'm building a lot of internal tools around predictive analytics to try to find those trends so that we can launch products more consistently. And we also have a testing framework to make sure that we can launch them and grow them. So jury's still out what's going to work best for us. Lucky we have a lot of data points around that. We integrating acquisitions is also quite tough, but we've started to get success there as well. So it's going to be an interesting journey, whether buying or building is the right path.
Yeah, that makes sense. In terms of like your geography, right? You're obviously in Australia. I'm in the US. I know when we worked together, a lot of your focus was on the US and Australia, and you were expanding to different markets. Is there a specific region or country that you're kind of bullish on now that you kind of slept on before, you didn't think about before?
Yeah, I can only speak from my experience, not from research or anything like that. And that experience was guided by just results. So in that, we launched in Australia, and then we launched in the UK, and then Canada, and then the US. And when we do our testing, we often find that the US is probably one of the worst regions to launch a brand in, because the advertising ecosystem is so complicated and every 14-year-old knows how to use Facebook ads. So it's just a bit crazy over there. So I kind of try to avoid the US and grow it in another market. All of the ones I've just mentioned are great. But the EU as a whole is really lucrative at the moment. There's some complications, obviously, with translations and stuff like that you need to work around. But it's kind of like what people tell me. I've only been doing this for 3.5 years, but people say the way that it used to be is it's still like that in the EU, which is really exciting. So I think for your listeners, just test every region. Don't get addicted to the US. Test every region. It's really not that hard, providing you understand the fundamentals of how to set up a store and whatnot.
Yeah, awesome. In terms of a framework on like, okay, say you launch in Australia and then you think about expanding, do you start expanding at a certain revenue standpoint? Like, hey, we've done $1 million in Australia. Now let's roll it out that we have proof of concept to Canada, UK. Is that kind of how you think about it? Or how do you think about going from one place and dominating and then expanding to the second place, third, and so on?
Yeah, I think there's a few components, and it's really case by case about where you are, both financially and what your goals are. If you're just trying to build a lifestyle business, one region's enough. If you plan to raise capital and grow a massive business, rushing to become first, the market leader for that product category is really important. We did that with Oodie, and we're in a very good spot because of it. But that's going to drain cash flow. It's also going to drain resources. Who's looking after the multiple Shopify stores, who's dealing with all the tax implications, all of that kind of stuff. So you need to think that through. But I always encourage people to launch in multiple markets, because, or at least test them to understand the customer acquisition costs that you can achieve in those markets, because otherwise, it's great diversification. It allows, because some regions, fatigue, the seasonality, all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, always encourage launching just as quickly as possible, and your cash position allows.
Awesome. And the very last question I have for you today, with Black Friday, Cyber Monday, the holidays coming up, Q4, whatnot, is there anything that you're doing differently this year that you didn't do in previous years that people should be thinking about?
So look, not really. I think that the main thing to do is to get a lot of momentum running into it, right? Like, you can run giveaways, you can just get a ton of data through that pixel, just to really engage, get as many followers as you can, get people through your email flows, just really push, maybe even sacrificing some margin in these in these months running up to it, to make sure that ad spend goes, you can keep that rolling. So yeah, I think that's the main thing. Focus on your inventory levels as well, your demand management. Make sure that you're not going to sell out. Be mindful of Chinese New Year coming up as well. That's something that I always forget about. So always making sure that you've got plenty of inventory to last you through to March as well is really important.
Davie, you're the man. Thank you so much for making the time. I know you've got a crazy busy schedule. Thank you for being here. What's the best place or places for people to connect? And I'll drop all the links below.
Twitter's fine, Davie Fogarty, or head over to YouTube if you want to learn a bit more about e-commerce.
Awesome, man. Appreciate you. Thank you.
Thanks, mate.